Welcome, everybody. Simon Rosenberg from Hopium Chronicles. This is a gathering of our paid subscribers. We get together a few times a month, talk about the latest events and things that are happening in American politics. What I'm going to do tonight, and what I have said to all of you, is that I am going slow in terms of trying to figure out what happened in the election, where we go from here. Excuse me. Drink more water before you turn these things on, Simon, right? Um, And so I have been in Hopium in my daily writing. I've been sort of refining and putting out new information and updating things. And so tonight, what I'm going to do is this is in the vein of a sketch and not a painting or a photograph. We're still evolving. There's still more data coming. We didn't even hear from the campaign itself until just a few days ago. And one of the reasons I've been going slow is I wanted to let the campaign talk to us before we sort of jump to conclusions. It was important that they got to weigh in on what they thought happened because they frankly were there and had a lot more data than the rest of us, um, and a lot more understanding of the dynamics of the race than we did. So, but let me try to give you, in the spirit of Hopium, to sort of share with you my latest thinking about things, and then we'll get to questions. Okay. So number one, this was a close election, and right now today, Trump has a 1.47 national popular vote lead. It may go down a little bit more. We're not sure. We ended up picking up a seat in the House to get to 215, and the Senate race that was the painful loss in Pennsylvania. We lost by 16,000 votes. We also know that in some of these same battleground states, we won important Senate races, right? We won in Arizona, Nevada, and Michigan and Wisconsin. We had, despite us losing statewide in North Carolina, Anderson Clayton and Josh Stein and the team of North Carolina Dems had a terrific election, winning many statewide races, breaking the supermajority, winning a Supreme Court race. And now they were so successful that the Republicans are actually trying to legislatively take all that away from them and also to disqualify votes that have already been counted in another kind of deeply illiberal set of acts by among the most illiberal political parties in the country, the North Carolina Republican Party. We got back to a supermajority in Oregon. We won a bunch of these House races that were races that we had underperformed in 2022, where we set out to go back and claim ground in New York and California that we had lost. And so there is in Wisconsin, right? We picked up a lot of state legislative seats. We won Supreme Court seats in Michigan. There were victories here, and it was a close election. This was not um, Donald Trump didn't have a landslide. He didn't have a big win. This was a very narrow win where we actually had lots of wins and even picked up. We actually gained ground in the House, right? Not as far as we want. Trump ended up winning by slightly more than 100,000 votes if had switched in the three blue wall states. And in the House, it was less than 4,000 votes. If they had switched, we would have been in control of the House. So this was a close election. And I think Trump is already misreading this, not surprisingly, right? Because he's impulsive and wild and extreme. And so he's already, I think, overreaching with his cabinet nominations, which is why it's so important that we continue to fight the most egregious of these appointments that we've been doing here at Hopium, because it exposes his recklessness and his extremism and his just disregard for our democracy by putting people up who are literally, child rapists and drunks and Russian apologists. I mean, we are all so much better than this, and we need to use these outrageous appointments early on to do our best to defeat them so we get better people serving the country, but also to remind people who just voted for Donald Trump who he really is and not who they thought he was during the election. And so this contesting the most egregious of these appointments is really important. And I think Trump has already stumbled. I mean, this is some of the most sloppy, out of the gate, reckless behavior we've seen by an incoming administration. No big surprise, right? Like Donald Trump is still going to be Donald Trump. He isn't going to be some better version of him. We've been waiting for him to get better for a long time, and that's been a lost cause, certainly in our politics. And I want to say to the Hopium community, of those of you who volunteered and did incredible amounts of work, we had a lot of wins too, right? I mean, we were the largest outside investor in the North Carolina Democratic Party, where we raised $1.1 million. We were Ruben Gallego's biggest donor and bundler in the country, $700,000 for him. We raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for for 8 of the House seats that flipped this cycle, including Tom Suozzi's race earlier this year. 7 of them were races that we prioritized and raised huge amounts of money for, made phone calls for, postcarded for. Many of you volunteered, for on the ground. We invested in the Nebraska Democratic Party where we won the blue dot, and we made other gains down ballot in Nebraska. We had a lot of wins here in Hopium world, and not as many as we all wanted, certainly. But I think I come back after our first cycle together, proud of what we've done, excited about what we can do. Because not only did we have a good 2024, but we had a great 2023. I mean, we won a whole bunch of races in 2023 and played a major role, most particularly in Virginia, where we were involved in helping flip the assembly in a major way and keep the Senate. We're going back into Virginia now already. Virginia has an election in November of 2025. We've endorsed Abigail Spanberger, a phenomenal candidate for governor in Virginia. That's going to be a major priority for us next year. We had to let this election finish first, and we just heard, we just got that final vote in California for Adam Gray. Congratulations, everybody. A race that we won by less than 200 votes. So, silver linings in a tough year, and, things to build on and learn from. We not only learned from our mistakes and things that didn't go well, but things that went well, and a lot did go well this time, and we need to be talking about that. Second is that I want to say, just in my list of things tonight that I'm thinking about, I continue to come back to sort of this reality that Kamala Harris was an incredible candidate. And she was given a very tough assignment on July 21st, and she performed so extraordinarily in everything she did for the entire election, making the transition to be the nominee, keeping, things together with Joe Biden, uniting the party around her, picking a great vice presidential candidate, having that remarkable, historic, memorable convention, kicking Donald Trump's ass in the debate, right? And these rallies that were just so powerful. I mean, she did a phenomenal job. And I think we all have to be so grateful to her for how she just left it all on the playing field every day for all of us. There's just no question about that. I just come back to when I look back, one of the most powerful things that I come back to is just what an extraordinary political athlete she is, and just what a great candidate she was, and what a great job she did for all of us. I don't think we should ever let that get too far away from our understanding of what happened in this election. Third, I think there was a collective failure by the super PAC and by the campaign and by all of us to define Trump early. In 1995, the election since 1964, where we had the biggest margin of victory, was Bill Clinton's reelection in 1996. He won by 8.5 points, bigger than Obama's 2 election victories. And in that election, we defined Bob Dole, our ultimate opponent, in the fall of 1995. We went up with ads. Sorry about I told you I think I screwed up the lighting here tonight. We defined Bob Dole early in that election. In the fall of 1995, we kind of knocked him out. And one of the reasons we had such a huge margin in that race was that we defined our opponent early, and he was never able to recover from it. In the Cook Report, they did an analysis of why we did so well in the Senate races in places where Harris didn't win. And their lead conclusion was Democrats had a lot of money. They went in early and they defined their opponents in those Senate races early. We simply just didn't do that in the presidential race. And why that is, we're going to be talking about for decades potentially. Donald Trump, one of the reasons I was so optimistic about us winning is that the fear and opposition to MAGA had been the driving force in our politics since 2018. It's why we did so well in 2018 and 2020, 2022, and 2023. We were able to evoke this fear and opposition to this radical politics with voters and make them unacceptable, to define them early and knock them out of the box. This version of MAGA, 2024, was more dangerous and uglier than earlier versions. And I was confident that the campaign, given the resources they had, would be able to define Trump early. And it's one of the reasons why, if you remember, on December 9th of 2023, I said publicly on Twitter that it's time for the campaign to get turned on. They needed to start going after Trump. They needed to start defining him early, as we do in elections. That just never happened. And we need to really come to a greater understanding of why, because I think it's a central reason why Donald Trump, in a Houdini-like way, was able to escape and make himself appealing. I mean, in the among the voters that decided this election, Donald Trump, according to Navigator, had higher favorabilities than Kamala Harris. That's an unimaginable thing, right? It's just an unimaginable thing. It's very hard to imagine that he was capable of rehabilitating himself to this degree. And I think that there was a collective failure, including by Merrick Garland, to do what was required to make sure that this guy wasn't president. And because he didn't deserve to be, he attacked the country, he betrayed the country, he's a rapist, fraudster, traitor, and a felon. All those things are still true today. It doesn't matter that he won the election, and he didn't. We had enough material, I felt, from having been in this for a long time, to be able to do what we had done in these previous elections, right? Which was to make fear and opposition to MAGA the central driving force of of the election. Certainly, the unfavorability of Joe Biden and inflation were a heavy weight on us. But the heavy weight on them was that they had just nominated a guy who had been convicted of 34 felonies and was found to have raped a woman in a department store dressing room and had serially betrayed the country. I mean, we could have litigated all of these things more effectively, in my view. And I think it's a central reason why, we didn't have the election that we all wanted to have. And you note that, again, in the Senate races where we won, Cook report said that that's what we actually did to win, that we defined our opponent early, as Bill Clinton did in 1995 and 1996. It's something that I called for publicly on December 9th on Twitter, which created a storm, stuff that I wrote about here at Hopium. All of you are Hopium readers know how often I talked about who he was and what he represented and how dangerous he was. And I just don't think we did a good enough job explaining that to people, particularly to first-time voters and people who are new and low information voters who needed to be re-educated about him and retold the story of who he was. I think we didn't get that done. Fourth is that clearly something very important happened in this election demographically, which is that our significant advantages that we've enjoyed with Hispanic voters and young people unraveled. This is a significant development, and I want to talk about this a little bit. In after the 2004 election, when they had a trifecta and we were down, it feels very much like this election. I and others identified these emerging demographic groups of Hispanics and young people who were starting to push into the electorate in very large numbers. The millennial generation's a big generation, and to talk about how we needed to build a politics around them. And what was important is that from 1992 to 2004, we averaged 47% of the vote in those four presidential elections. With this new coalition opportunity, demography is not destiny, it's an opportunity. We built a politics around that. And in the midterms, we knocked it out of the park in 2006 with young people and Hispanics, and it was critical to these strong midterms that we had. And then Obama embraced this same politics and ran on it. And with our strong performances with young people and with Hispanics in those driving this new coalition, we were able to average 51% of the vote in the next four elections from 2008 to 2020. That 51% over four elections, that was a majority coalition. The last time that we got to 51% over four elections was FDR's four elections in the 1930s and 1940s. This was a significant achievement. This election, that these pieces of our coalition unraveled and Trump made major gains. So we no longer have a majority coalition as Democrats. We did have one for many, many years, and we don't anymore. And so one of our big projects going forward is that we're going to have a national strategy to grow our vote, to rebuild a majority coalition, to gain back some of the votes that we lost. But I think we have to be open-minded and not view that we have to go back and build what we have had. We have to go build a new one. And whether that's going to be working class Americans, Hispanics, young people, rural voters, whatever it's going to be, I'm very open to that. But I think we have to go through the same process we did 20 years ago about creating an understanding of how we can rebuild a majority coalition for our center left politics that we just lost in this last election. It's a big deal. This is a major priority. Next, we've got to get on the right side of opportunity with voters. We have to win the big economic argument with the Republicans. You hear me talk about this, that since 1989 and the Cold War ended, there have been 52 million jobs created in America. 50 million of them have been created under Democratic presidents. We've had three consecutive Democratic presidents leave the country far better than they found it, saw strong economic growth, lower deficits, American progress across virtually all measures, including this president, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris, this presidency. And we've had three consecutive Republican presidents that have brought recession, the last two very severe, higher deficits and American decline. This contrast between us continually doing a really good job and making things better for everyday people and the Republicans, acting like a friggin' Russian-backed wrecking ball, on American society is something that we have to be able to establish this contrast. And I just want to say that we have a lot of work to do here on how to talk about the economy, how to be more confident about talking about our achievements and the things that we've done. We haven't let working class people down in America. We have fought for them unbelievably successfully in three consecutive administrations. It's been the Republicans who've pushed a politics that have let working class people down. We can't get psyched out on this stuff. We've done a really good job when we've been in office, and we need to build on the success of Joe Biden, Barack Obama, and Bill Clinton, and own that success and continue to drive a contrast with their repeated failure. This is going to be really important because Donald Trump is likely, if he pursues the economic policies that he wants to pursue, it's likely that he's going to unravel the strong economy that he's inherited. So we have work to do here to get on what I call the right side of opportunity and to win this economic argument with the Republicans. This is critical to winning back, working class Americans that we have lost ground with, and this is something I think that's urgent. You may hear my dog barking. If he keeps barking, I may take a little break here. Tuggy, right? Tuggy, the crazy bulldog. Um, Next, getting louder and fighting our politics 24/7, 365. This is something that's so central to the understanding here at Hopium, but it is so vital and so critical. I mean, we still, as Democrats, sort of do the governing thing and then the campaign thing. And they do the campaign thing 24/7, 365. They don't see a difference between these things. They're far louder than we are. I'm going to just take a little break. Everyone take a little break. I'm just going to go put Tuggy back into his little area, and then I'll be right back. Yes, Tug. We all love Tug. There he is. My 12-year-old crazy bulldog. Okay. Getting louder, 24/7, 365. This encompasses so many things that we talk about here. Building better center-left media, like Courier Newsroom and Midas Touch and here at Hopium and all the things we have to build. It also means elected officials have to get louder every day, not just in their campaigns. They have to use their offices and they have to rethink the way that they engage every day with the public. They need to be louder. Every single Democratic elected official in the country needs to be part of this loud chorus every day, not just during campaigns. The parties themselves have to become more like Midas Touch than a traditional 20th century political party. They have to be engaging like Kamala HQ on social media and punching every day and being in the game every day. We have a lot of work to do here. I think one of the reasons, if you look at the demographic groups that we lost, most particularly Hispanics and young people, they're the ones who consume social media the most. And I think that we got whooped with them and also first time voters. I mean, for people who are lower information voters, we got whooped in this election and we need to get louder and make this a major priority. Next, we need a reform and renewal agenda. This is something I've been talking about for 2 years at Hopium. We can't be the party of big government and the status quo. We can't be the defender of a city that many Americans see as distant and corrupt and far away. We need a big reform and renewal agenda. And we're going to need one that we can enact to deal with the unprecedented corruption we're about to see, and to make it clear that we want government to not be big, but to be effective and to be there for people every day. We called it in the Clinton era, we want government to work better and cost less, was sort of the line that we used. This is a big thing. I've written about this over the last couple of weeks. I won't go into more detail on this. There's lots of opportunities, I think, here for creativity and entrepreneurship. And then finally, I want to not let go of one of the best parts of the campaign, which is this clear embrace of patriotism, love of country, of freedom and opportunity. This during the convention, which I feel was so grounded in love of country and patriotism, the flag and all the things that came with it, this was a very powerful manifestation of the Democratic Party. And I know it is, for some people, they think we should have been focusing on kitchen table issues. I don't think it's a choice. I think we have to do both. And I think particularly given what we're up against. And I will tell you, as being doing this for as long as I've been doing this, the convention Democratic Party to me was one of the was the most powerful Democratic Party that I've been part of since I began this. And it was because our ideology for that 4 days was love of country and patriotism, which is very inclusive and uniting and bringing people together. Everybody can be part of that. And I don't think we can let go of that. And it's something that I want to try to make sure we hang on to here at Hopium. It's core, if you go back to my very first post at Hopium, it's core to my understanding of how we have to beat them, right? That we have to put more positive sentiment out in the world to counter their negative sentiment and their pessimism. It's really important. And then finally, I'll say that I think what's exciting about what's coming next is that we're in a period of reinvention and reimagination as Democrats. Our old thing is going to give way now to a new set of things. And it allows all of us to participate in building what comes next. And I think that that's really exciting to me. I've been part of these periods of regeneration and reimagination in the Democratic Party. I played a major role in the last big wave 20 years ago, where we invented new organizations and we created new tools and we identified new demographic opportunities and we advanced new, arguments about who we were. We're about to go through that same period again now. And I know things feel hard and dark right now, and they should be, right? I mean, this was a bad election, and these are bad people, and bad things are going to happen to the country that we love. But what I just want to recommend to everybody is that when you beam into politics now, think about how, just in a few weeks, right? We're going to have Hakeem Jeffries as our leader. There won't be any singular leader of the party. We're going to be seeing these 2030 spectacular next generation leaders out taking up a lot of space, from Gavin Newsom and Kamala herself and whatever she chooses to do, to Cory Booker just got into the leadership of the Senate. And we're going to see Hakeem asserting himself, and, Wes Moore and Gretchen Whitmer. Make your long list of these next generation leaders. We're going to be seeing all of them a lot more. They're going to be on the national stage. Josh Shapiro, JB Pritzker, Jared Polis, and whatever your list is. AOC is going to become probably a ranking member. She's worked her ass off in the last, few years, in the last few months in particular. And so I think that what's exciting now is that we get to go build a new thing together, and to reimagine and to reinvent, because the thing that we had didn't work, and we need to go now build a new thing. And I think that there are times when I really get excited about that. And certainly I hope, in the spirit of that, you've seen how I've been bringing in people with ideas. I mean, Hopium is going to be a very open place. We're going to be hearing from lots of people with lots of ideas, trying to not only talk about what happened, but what we need to do next, right? What comes next. And so try to, I think, approach this period in a spirit of experimentation and entrepreneurship and reimagination. And that certainly, I think, is going to make our journey together far more interesting. There's no reason to hold on or go back, right? We need to go forward, as Kamala said. And I think it's the right time to do this. And I think it's what's going to make these periods of being out of power can be very hard, but they also can be rejuvenating, and they can force us now to get smarter and better and fight harder and more effectively for the things that we care about. And I certainly think we're going to try to do that here every day at Hopium. So, folks, those are my thoughts tonight. I'm happy to let's have a question. Let's get into some questions. Put your questions in the box. We have a pretty good turnout, 500 people here tonight. I didn't know we'd have so many folks here tonight. I know everyone is kind of a little battered and bruised. I certainly am. um, disappointed. Let's talk about the chairs race. A lot of questions I can just see about the chairs race. Yeah, look, we're going to have a race, and I think it's important that we have a debate. I'm a believer that primaries are important for parties because, and we didn't have a primary, a real primary in 2016. We had kind of a weird primary in 2020, and then we didn't have a primary this time. And I think primaries allow new voices to come, new tactics to be tried. They're critical periods for regeneration and rejuvenation and reimagination of our politics. And I think that we haven't really had as much of that recently as we've probably would have probably been good for us, right? So this chairs race, I think we have to allow it to be a debate. Let's use this time between now and February 1st when the vote takes place to allow these voices to emerge and to have a spirited, respectful, thoughtful debate about our future together. What a blessing for us now at a time when we're all kind of down to have, so far the candidates who've gotten in are terrific. I mean, Ben Wickler is certainly a very formidable candidate, very good friend of Hopium. He's been here many times, right? We invested a lot of money into Wisconsin this cycle. I had an interview this week with Ken Martin, who's the very successful chair of the Minnesota Democratic Party, who laid out, I think, a compelling vision for what he wanted to do for the DNC. Martin O'Malley is in. We'll see who else gets in. But I think there'll be 4 debates in January. And we will be participating in that. And I encourage all of you, I don't know where the debates are going to be, and I don't know if they've been announced yet, but if they're where you live, you should go and bring all your friends and try to ask questions and engage. This is going to be an open process. I mean, the people who are in so far, Ben and Ken and Martin O'Malley, these are all super thoughtful, good people, and they're all going to be respectful of one another. I mean, Ken Martin went on and on and on in our discussion before and after the interview about how much he admires Ben Wickler and what he's done in Wisconsin. They have enormous respect for one another, and so I think this is going to be really healthy, because I don't think there are big divisive things right now in the family. I mean, maybe there will be. I could be naive about that. I don't. I think that we are disappointed, but we're not in a civil war with each other, right? We had a disappointing election, not a and so I think this is going to be a really healthy thing that's about to happen. I think I'm interviewing Ben Wickler next week. We're working on the details of that. I'll have that at Hopium. Certainly I've known Martin O'Malley forever, and we'll get him on as well. We'll see who else gets in. Mallory McMarrow is looking at it. I hope she gets in. She'd be a great, fresh, young voice, important, so smart, so capable. She'd be a great addition to this. I think we should look forward to this. This is part of the period of reimagination and reinvention, right? This chairs race, and it's going to be. I will be doing what I can to continue to bring it close to you at the Hopium site. Um, the so Susan Pfeiffer asked a question about those missing Democrats that didn't vote in the election outside the battleground states. I mean, the turnout in the battleground states were mostly okay, or even in some cases better than 2020. Yeah, look, this goes back to, if you've read my writing about this, that goes back to, in my view, a loudness problem, is that, we have to be talking to everybody all the time. And I think the campaign had enough money that there could have been more communications done with Democrats outside of the battleground states, whether it was national ads on CNN and MSNBC, whether it was using our email list to do more than begging you for money all the time and treating you with respect and asking you to be an information warrior and participate in the campaigns. They could have done regular Zoom trainings for all of you for how to be more effective communicators for the campaign. This was a huge missed opportunity, in my view, by the campaign. And I will tell you, it's something that I not only wrote about a lot, and even in an op-ed in the New Republic, but I met with the campaign about this many times, and it never happened. And it was a mistake in treating all of you like. And the way I talk about this is we need to view our supporters as partners in the fight and not donors to the cause. This is a major issue. It wasn't in my list of things today. I was going to get into it but then Tug intervened. And I forgot because it's on the list, but we need to demand that all of us need to have a different relationship with our parties and our candidates. And we are not ATMs. We are citizens of this country who deserve far more respect than the way that we're treated in these emails that we get from the campaigns. And I think that this was a missed opportunity to have seen the 6 million donors as amplifiers and information warriors and not just as donors, as partners in the fight, not donors to the cause. And I think that, there was no national GOTV effort by the campaign. There was no national early vote effort where we were asking every Democrat to vote early wherever they were or to do GOTV. There was not a national campaign. There was a campaign in 7 states. So we shouldn't be surprised if there was drop off in the states where there were no competitive statewide elections, like in New York and in Illinois and in California, in the Northwest, right, where there was no reason for a Democrat to vote if you weren't in one of these congressional races, and so we should have expected drop off, and because that's what happened in 2022. I mean, core to my whole analysis is that in the battlegrounds where we ran our big campaigns, we won in 2022, but where outside the battlegrounds they did really well. And the other thing that contributed to Donald Trump's popular vote success was that in the two biggest Republican states, there were competitive statewide races and close races in Texas and Florida. So those states voted at very high numbers, whereas some of the biggest Democratic states actually had drop off. This is a major issue, right? Because if we had had a full turnout in New York and California, and in Washington and Oregon and Oregon voted well, but in Washington and in Illinois, would we have won the popular vote? And would the narrative of the election be very different? So it's possible. I mean, I don't know that. But, we have to anticipate that if we're not talking to voters, they're not going to vote for us. And we have enough money now. We have to be approaching this from a place of abundance and not scarcity. We have a lot of money. We have a lot of volunteers. We're a strong party now. We're not operating out of weakness and scarcity. And this notion that we can only participate in 7 states and let the rest of the country go is kind of a hangover from a politics of scarcity that we all lived in as Democrats. But because of all of you and the money that you give and all the work that you do, we're now living in a time of abundance. And we need to rethink our politics a little bit. Ken Martin and I have a long talk about this in our video, which if you haven't watched, I would encourage you. So I think this is a really we need to leave no part of the country behind, right? And part of the reason this chairs race is so important is that we do need to have a 50-state strategy. We need to be funding our parties far more aggressively. We need to use our party apparatus. It's been seen by many large donors in the Democratic Party as being peripheral. To me, it's very central. And in fact, Tom Bonnier and I are going to present to the Association of State Democratic Committees, as now called, the state parties, about the election on Friday. And I'm going because I believe in parties. And and in this election, we funded the North Carolina party, the Nebraska party, the Wisconsin party. We worked with the DCCC in those House races. We worked with the DNC in the Virginia races. I'm a party guy. I believe in the party. And we, I think, have neglected what is the most important infrastructure that we have as Democrats, which is the parties themselves. And it's why I think this chair's race is so important. Let me go to lots of really interesting questions here. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to look, hopium, for those of you who are hopium people, you know that, there's been serendipity. Hopium's been there's been serendipity behind this project. I really built it just for the 2024 cycle. I didn't think for a day past. I didn't spend a day thinking about what would happen afterwards. I thought we were going to win, and I don't think anyone here would be surprised in me saying that. And I think I do want to go on the record saying that I wasn't alone in that. Nate Silver had her winning at the end, as did 538, as did all of the major um, forecasters, with the exception of one. I'm now forgetting who it was, but there was one forecaster that had Decision Desk had Trump winning, but every other major forecaster had her winning. And I, so I, here we are, right? I'm going to continue to be very conservative in the recommendations that I make to all of you. That is my obligation. There are many people in this community who are here on fixed incomes and who have limited resources and time. And I am not going to have a long laundry list of things. People approach these things differently. Here, we're going to be very conservative, and every endorsement we make has to be in a race where I feel like our money and time is going to matter and where it will make a difference and where we have a possibility of winning. I'm not into lost cause races here, and there will be special elections this year that are going to come up that will be that we won't get involved in because I don't think we can win, and I don't want to pour your money into stuff where we can't win, because there are plenty of places we can pour our money and time where we can win, and I would rather focus on that. We're still a small community. I mean, look, we raised. I don't know how much I've talked about this, but we probably raised. I'm going to do the math here really quickly. We probably raised altogether this cycle about $8.5 million, but all into highly strategic and targeted places, right? This wasn't, and I'm very proud of that. When I founded Hopium, raising money for candidates was not part of what I thought we would be doing. And I thought it was just going to be a political newsletter, but all of you asked for it and wanted guidance. And so I started doing it. I've done it before. I ran an organization that made endorsements and raised money and helped candidates win for 8 years in the 1990s and 2004. And my original organization, NDN, was a PAC. It became one of the 10 largest PACs in the country. And we only endorsed in swing district races all across the country. And so, I'm going to, so I don't have a plan for 2025. We needed to let 2024 happen, and then we'll see. But Spanberger is going to be a core part of that. She needs to win. She has national capabilities. If she's going to be a national player if she wins. Not only do we need to win Virginia, but she's somebody who is incredibly talented and capable. And all of you will be weighing in every day on all the other places that you think we should be involved, because you guys aren't shy, and I appreciate that about this community. You fight for the people in your communities, and we'll develop a good program, early next year. We've got time for that. We had other things we needed to do now, instead. I do think it's coming up here in a couple questions, is that we also should be demanding in this chairs race and a better explanation for why it is that we gave all this money and ran all these ads and did all the volunteer work that we did, and Trump ran far fewer ads and didn't have a traditional field operation, and it seemed like their strategy worked better than ours. We need. I've talked about this a lot at Hopium. We really need to understand what happened here. I mean, I think, this is a big question about whether all of you are going to put the time and money in again. Because, look, you gave and gave and gave, and you worked and worked and worked, and the other side didn't do it, and they won, and we didn't. And these are like legitimate and serious questions about how do we understand what happened, right? I do think that that they had a better understanding of the way that information flows to lower information voters and on social media than we did. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? I mean, the Future Forward, our super PAC, their central approach was to ad test and to test ads. Well, Donald Trump moved a lot of information to people that had nothing to do with advertising. It had to do with viral media and organic content, it's called. And we organic content is the coin of the realm. People sharing information with their friends and their communities. And our super PAC had no real theory of the case on that stuff. And it was like a 20-year-old kind of understanding of the game. And Trump was much more viral, much more involved, and their side is much more amplified than our side is. And so stuff moves around faster. But a lot of those voters that broke against us at the end, the late deciding voters, the young people, Hispanic voters, these are people that are the largest consumers of social media in the country. And we should, there's a lot of talk about how we lost and what happened, but there is no, you cannot have a serious discussion about what happened in this election or current American politics without having a significant focus on how much louder they are than we are, and how much money they've invested in shaping the daily discourse, and how many more tools they have to move information around than we do. And you just can't have a serious conversation, in my view, about the election or what happens. And I'll give you an example of that, right? I mean, this whole concept of lived experience, which we hear a lot about, and we were discussing this earlier today in Hopium. Lived experience is a political construct. There isn't an abstract or objective lived experience. Republicans view the economy terribly. Our voters view the economy really well. How is it possible that the lived experience of Democrats was so much better than the lived experience of Republicans? And that's because lived experience is a construct. People believed inflation was too high because they were told that by Republicans with hundreds of millions of dollars and day in and day out pounding of that for years. Our voters actually gave Joe Biden a 75% approval rating on inflation, right? So we have to recognize that everything about our understanding of things is shaped in part by their information superiority, their superiority. And, we can't really have a conversation about our politics without making the issue of their information superiority central. How we got to this point, why it is that we didn't invest more to match them. Well, we're going to have opportunities to build organizations now like Midas Touch and Courier Newsroom and Resolute Square and Talking Points Memo and Pod Save America and New Republic and all these new entries, Brian, that are coming into the game that we need to continue. Blue Sky could be. Fingers crossed in Blue Sky, but we've all been burned on this before in social media. We got to be careful. Substack has become a powerful new tool. I mean, our community now, including people who follow Hopium, which is a lower level of engagement than subscription, we're 160,000 people, right? That's a lot of people for this one little community, right? We can easily get up to 200, 250,000 people. But what's important is the people here, many of them are activists. They have networks. They reach other people. The reach of Hopium is significant. And so, we need to be aggressive about building new capacities and make this, we have some big projects, right? We got to go gain voters back. We need to get more voters. We need to get louder and to be 24/7, 365. We need to get on the right side of opportunity and win, and win the economic argument. We need this reform renewal agenda. There's big things we have to do that we all can play a role in to get done together. And we need to continue to be motivated by love of country and patriotism. I'm going to start really trying to roll this out as kind of an agenda. I'm playing around with it tonight, and I'll write about it a little bit tomorrow. And but I'm relentless. I feel like we sort of know what happened in this election, right? Right. That we didn't define him adequately. He was too popular. He was misrepresented, he was seen as being more benign than he was. And Joe Biden and inflation weighed us down. And I think that I also think the campaign, worked really hard, but I also think the campaign got confused about what to do about her as an incumbent, her as a change agent, the relationship. We have the best economy in 60 years, and we didn't even talk about it during the campaign. So, I mean, I think there were some mistakes we made, here, and certainly we have to learn from them and be clear-eyed about it. Let me go on to more questions. I see people, yes, talking. Yeah, look, there's people are asking about Kamala, and she may run for governor of California. I don't know. I don't know. She may run for president again. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, she's an old friend here of mine. I've known her for 20 years. I'm really proud of her. And, um, let's see what she's going to do. I mean, we got to get through this transition. And I appreciate, by the way, everyone who has called their senators, House members, asked them to fight hard against the terrible four. I think Hegseth is going to fall in the next, soon. It could be tomorrow. It could be another one down. And then, next up is Tulsi Gabbard. I mean, that's where I really want to focus on next. She can't become DNI. It's too dangerous for the country. This is something Republicans are getting squishy on her. They're already signaling that. And so we need to keep fighting. I hope everyone realized that, look, I mean, we wanted to fight some of these the original terrible four that I laid out. It's very possible that by tomorrow, two of them will have fallen. I mean, this is significant stuff, folks, and whatever you've done to contribute to that, just keep working hard. I mean, we got to do what we can do. We can't, we got to play the hand that's in front of us. And also we have to learn in fighting these nominees, we have to strengthen our community and learn how to fight better and differently in this new era. And that's another reason why this is kind of a test case, spring training, right, for what's coming soon. We got to keep working it. Um, yeah, the yeah, Paul raises this question about the words resistance versus opposition. Um, I prefer opposition because we are actually the opposition party. I mean, it's actually kind of an accurate phrase for us. And I think to me, opposition is more appropriate. It's more elevated than resistance. I just I you all know that on Hopium, I refer to us as the ferocious opposition, right? Is my term. I'm open to better phrases, but I'm much more, we have more power than a resistance, right? We're in government. I mean, we almost won the House. I mean, we are part of the government of the United States. And, we need to view ourselves, I think, as the opposition. I mean, one of the things I'll be talking about is that we do need to develop an agenda, right? We need to not just oppose, but to propose and to develop an argument for what we want to do, not just what we don't want them to do. They may make that very easy for us because it may be things like preserve our democracy and you know not tariff people to death and all the other things that Trump is threatening to do, not do mass deportations and so on. But we need in the spirit of what I was talking about earlier about reinvention, reimagination, innovation, entrepreneurship. We need to go build a new agenda. You notice, by the way, that there's no question that one of the central drivers of inflation in the last, which the Republicans claim they care about a lot, has been housing. There is no housing agenda from Trump. I do think that Harris's housing agenda was actually a very important part of her campaign, um, and um, and so we need to develop our next agenda, and it doesn't have to have 27 parts. It has to have, three or four big ones. We got to get the big stuff right. I'm starting to lay out ideas, right, in my little agenda I gave you today. It's the beginning of this discussion, but we have to do more than oppose. We have to propose as well. It's critical. And there's time for that. But that's, think back to the contract for America um, in 1994. Gingrich had a plan. People like plans. And they like to believe that you have a plan, you've thought things out. We'll have a plan. Nancy Pelosi talks often that when we flipped the House in '06, that I think it was five more, I forget now, the agenda six, it was six things she had in her agenda. We'll have some kind of agenda like that by the spring of next year, I'm assuming, but we should be discussing that now. And the interesting thing is that there's no president, right? So like everything's on the table, in this agenda setting, this discussion, everything's on the table and about what we can do now. It is a new day. It's we're in the post-Biden era now, and the post-Clinton era, the post-Biden era. The era of the boomer politicians running our party is the generational wheel is turned, and we're moving more profoundly into the future. I think it's really exciting. I love the next set of leaders of the Democratic Party. I think, and we've got governors who are going to be weighing in. I did a call with Jared Polis over the summer about us having new ideas on immigration, right? I think everything's on the table now, right? We're not bound by anything. And that's part of what's going to make all this kind of exciting, I think, in many ways. People are hungry for the next thing, I think. Let me, I've talked a little bit about some of these questions. Let me try to go. Um, Yeah, I mean, look, I think the question about I didn't mention social issues today or the culture war issues. They obviously mattered a lot, right? But I think that they only matter when we don't adequately fill the void on stuff that matters more. And that, we struggled, I think, to define the terms of the election and to to own the economic argument, right? And I think that those kinds of issues like the border and immigration and trans issues, they only really matter in elections when we haven't done a good enough job filling up with stuff that's our stuff. And I'm not saying they don't matter. And I think, but I think that they usually don't become determinative in an election. But they did this time, in part because I think we didn't do a good enough job filling things up and we left ourselves a little vulnerable, more so um than was healthy for us. And it's and look, these are things we need to discuss. I mean, I don't again, everything's on the table, right? We need to have a conversation. I'm not, for example, I will tell you that one of the things that I believe deeply, and I now realize it's not part of my list, and I have to add it, is reproductive freedom and abortion. I mean, we can't give up on that. I mean, a third of American women have no, live in abortion restricted states. We can't be satisfied until everyone has that Roe v. Wade is restored and that the dignity of women and the choices they make are not subsumed to the vagaries of men and male politicians. I mean, it's just an unacceptable situation in the United States. And I know some people are like, well, it didn't perform as well. I mean, my God, this is still a driving central issue of our politics because it has to do with human rights and dignity and respect for one another, in addition to all the other things and that it means, and the ability for women to control their own body. But it's also about, this term that I use in one of my presentations, the With Dems presentation, about how in the 1940s, FDR set us on a journey as Democrats to be the party of freedom versus the politics of dominion, of control, right? Authoritarianism is control over one another, right? And that we built our foundational values as a party, and starting with the Four Freedoms speech around freedom, that's still true today. I mean, we are still the Freedom Party. We're the party that wants to give people opportunity and freedom and choice. They are the party that's fighting to restore dominion and including the ability of men and male politicians to have control over women's reproductive freedom. And I think that these are things that are central and core to who we are and will continue to be in every way imaginable. And I've one of the reasons I do these presentations is that I do them and then I learn from what sort of works or doesn't work. I get feedback from you guys. Leaving out, I mean, I talked about freedom and patriotism, but I need to make it very, very clear that we can't back off 1 inch on our commitment to reproductive freedom for women and restoring the dignity, of the rights and freedoms that have been stripped away from half the population. It's unacceptable, and we have to keep fighting with everything we got. Um, Let me look at a few more questions. Yeah, I mean, so please comment, Simon. My beautiful young black grandson told me that he knew all the bad stuff about Trump, but he didn't know how Dems would do for him and his family, so he voted third party, right? Um, by the way, very few people voted third party, so this is not a common story. And yes, the campaign made a decision not to litigate the Biden economic record, and they decided to talk about all the stuff that Kamala was going to do. I think that was a mistake. It's easy for me to say. I didn't have all the information they have, right? I'm being very respectful of them. But I think that we could have talked about inflation and high prices and talked about all the good things that Biden did. And I think we could have done both. I don't think this was a choice. And I think we needed to do it. And as I wrote the other day, one of the things I'm worried about is that all of a sudden Donald Trump is going to be taking credit for low gas prices, low inflation, low, fentanyl deaths coming down, crime coming down, the flow to the border coming down, all these amazing things that Joe Biden just did. Trump is going to try to take credit for and flush Biden and his presidency into the memory hole, which is why we have to do what I've been talking about, which is that we have to start talking about the incredible success of the country under Democratic presidents writ large. This is what Bill Clinton talked about in his convention speech. And because the truth is that Clinton and Obama and Biden have left the country far better than they found it. three consecutive Democratic presidents. The last three Republican presidents have left the country in far worse shape than they found it. And we should be able to tell that story together. I think it matters to people, on the question of, what did Joe Biden do for working people? Joe Biden did more for working people than any fucking president like ever, basically. And this idea that there is this belief that somehow we walked away from working people, abandoned working people, it's the biggest bunch of bullshit in our discourse right now that I can possibly imagine. I mean, Bill Clinton's entire campaign in 1992 was about fighting for the forgotten middle class. His whole presidency, every single day, he got up thinking about how to make the lives of working people better. He came from very impoverished circumstances in one of the poorest states in the United States. This guy knew about struggle and families struggling. Joe Biden got up every day and he put so many friggin' points on the board for working people. The best job market since the 1960s, the lowest uninsured rate in American history, the most new businesses being formed in any period in all of our history, right? Stock market booming, which is really important for working people's 401ks and giving them the dignity of retirement. We can go down the long list of things that he did. Crime is down, border flows are down, fentanyl and overdose deaths are down. We are more energy independent today than we've been in generations. We've seen, and so, I think that we have to work through as a family why it's so hard for us to take credit for all the good things that we do. It's a problem. You people aren't going to know about these good things unless you tell them. And we have this sort of whole theory in our party that you can't tell working people that things are good if they're not feeling it. Well, that means that we never tell anybody that we are a good party and done good things, and so they don't know about it. And that's a strategy, right? To not tell people. And I have this line about how there's probably no greater form of liberal contempt that I have personally witnessed than people telling me that I shouldn't be telling my fellow citizens that their country is successful and that we're doing well, which we are, compared to every other developed nation in the world. Why would I hold back that knowledge and that understanding to other people in the country? Not letting them know that is a disservice, is contemptuous. Believing that I can't share the truth with them is contemptuous of them. It's putting me in a place of authority over them. I think our job is to be unrelenting in our desire and our capacity to share the truth with our fellow citizens. And the truth of this election was that America is an economic powerhouse that has no near peer, that Joe Biden led the country through a very difficult time and made the country far better. He met his fundamental promise to get us to the other side of COVID successfully. Our recovery from COVID is better than any country in the developed world. Inflation was lower here than any other developed country in the world. We managed inflation. We've now defeated inflation. We've gotten to the other side of inflation. We have interest rates cuts. We have the lowest uninsured rate. I went through all this other data, right? All these remarkable things have happened, and we didn't talk about them in the campaign. And I think it was a mistake. I think we could have said that prices were too high and we feel your pain, which is what the campaign did, and took the risk of using Donald Trump's central argument against us as their argument, right? Which is that prices are too high. But we could have done that and said, by the way, we know that and we had a plan to deal with it. And in fact, we got inflation way down and people are working and the economy's booming. And I'm really proud that we were handed, that we were handed a really difficult set of circumstances by one of the worst presidents in American history. We went to work, we made things better, wasn't perfect, and now we got an agenda to make things even better still. I think that was a possible narrative for the Harris campaign. It wasn't what they chose. And we're going to be debating this for a long time. And I will say that what I want to encourage all of you to wrap up here tonight is to have the courage of being proud of your party and being proud of your country and to not allow the cynics and the MAGAs and the people who are talking down our great country and our party and our leaders to let them win. I'm proud. I've never been more proud to be a Democrat than I was during this election and all the years that I've been in this. We live in the most remarkable country on earth. Our party's done more good for more people than arguably any organized force for good in all of America, in all of world history. We have an incredible track record and legacy as a party that we need to own and understand to use as an energy source for us to go out and do all this good work. Joe Biden was a terrific president and did a great job and left the country far better than we found it. I am, all of you know this has been central to my conversation with all of you here at COVID. I mean, at Hopium, and to get us through the other side of COVID as he did. I'm proud of my party. Their party is a Russian-backed wrecking ball on American society. I'm happy to have this debate every day of the week with them about our what we want to do versus what they want to do. But some of this has to do with us being stronger and more confident and being capable. There's a old line in sports, you can't score unless you shoot, right? People are not going to know things are better unless we tell them. My prediction is that Donald Trump by March or April is going to be doing some version of Morning in America with all the things that Joe Biden did that he did that we just didn't talk to the American people about. And that's one of the reasons why I'm harping on this so much is that we need to now lean in hard as Joe Biden exits the national stage about how, once again, a Democratic president inherited an incredible mess left to him by a Republican president before him and went to work and during difficult times and made things better for all of us. Because that's what we do as Democrats, right? We make things better for people. And we need to own all that and not run away from that. And I think that why there is still so much struggle in our family about this is the thing that I struggle with and I don't understand because I know that in political communications, if you don't tell people that things are better, they're not going to know it. Donald Trump told people that Joe Biden was stealing money from people in North Carolina during the storm and giving it to undocumented immigrants. It was a lie, but it became true. So if he can do that, why can't we tell people things that are true and make them true in their lives to that woman's, grandson, right? But he's not going to know about it unless we tell him. So I think we also have to have a very different kind of understanding of the way that we talk about ourselves and to do so with confidence and with strength and with admiration and respect and pride, right? We have to be loud and proud. And I think that's really critical to what we have to do going forward. Folks, I'm going to take off. Love you all. Thank you for being part of this. This video will be up tomorrow if you want to share it with folks. And please use the chat, the Hopium chat, to give me feedback on this. I'll be doing a brief write-up on it. I am flying tomorrow, so I don't have a lot of time. But I'll be getting to this. I'll be getting this out tomorrow morning for everybody. Take care, all. Keep fighting. I am so proud to be in this fight with all of you every day. And we've got to, we all know we got a lot of work ahead of us. But so rest up over the holidays. We're going to keep fighting hard early next year. Take care.